I call the meeting of the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Dossett,
Here.
Mr. Metcalf,
Present.
Ms. Novak,
Here.
Ms. Peliuzzo, Mr. Seiler,
Here.
Mr. Shepard, and Ms. Smith.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the August 3rd meeting. It's been a while since we met, if anybody can remember back that far.
I move approval of the minutes.
Oops, I'd like to make a correction if that's possible.
Do we have a second, and then we can discuss?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just a couple quick things. So on page 5, just to clarify, on third line down, I said this house falls into the eclectic period, and it says is a pure copy of the European type of housing. That shouldn't say and is modeled after European-inspired housing. And then on page 6, I feel like I'm filling the role of Trent tonight. Page 6, second paragraph, second full paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line. He did not feel it was enough to landmark a building. Although he agreed that William Trelease was significant, he did not feel it was enough to landmark a building, in this case, based on this nomination. That was very important to what I was trying to say that night. Thank you.
So can we have a friendly amendment to accept to move minutes as corrected?
So moved.
No, they have to agree.
Oh, they have to do it? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Seconder agrees.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you for your corrections.
Thank
Any
you.
other corrections? No? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Can I say aye?
Yeah. All right, the minutes are approved as corrected. Thank you. So we have absolutely nothing else on the agenda besides a study session for brainstorming on Preservation Month activities, which was my request. May is Preservation Month. Yay.
Can I stop you a couple of points ahead of this?
Yeah.
And it's actually something that maybe ties into this.
Yeah.
And this may be a really bad time for a bunch of reasons, but I'm interested in the Landmark Hotel and some of the debate that the recent mayoral primary has stimulated about it. And it's not a historic property that we've talked about very much, at least in the last several years. But in that mayoral primary, there were statements all the way from, we're going to let somebody spend $25 million on it to we should tear it down and build something else. And so I think that's something that we should at least consider whether or not we want to have some kind of an opinion about. And I don't know really how to go beyond that. But it tied into this because I knew we were looking for Preservation Month activities. And so I'm wondering whether or not we could have an open house at the Landmark Hotel as a Preservation Month activity. Cake, punch, get the owner to open the door for us.
Well, that was what my comment was going to be. I'm not sure about its current state of occupancy. I know they had corrected some deficiencies, but I'm not sure if it is ready for occupancy for any sort of assembly use, shall I say. So
can we see if it would be?
I can make inquiries.
Play
yes.
around with that?
Mm-hmm.
The last few times I've tried to contact XJ, he just hasn't been interested in responding. It was for the Folk and Roots Festival. We used that for a couple of years for our Festival Central. So I don't know how he is, and I'm not actually sure what the current state of ownership is. But I think it's an important building in downtown, and I think it's something that we should, consider, how we can expose people to. So that's my thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, it is the hotel and the Lincoln Square on the National Register of Historic Places, and then just the hotel is a landmark, right?
Yeah, just the hotel is a local landmark as well.
So there's, you know, at least some protection depending on what's going on, design review and such too. So,
Yeah, and I'm putting this forward more in the spirit of trying to think about something that we can sort of do locally. It almost kind of feels like the modern home tour to me a little bit, in that we've got a resource, and regardless of what happens to it, it's such a neat building. It would be nice to try to expose the community to it a bit. So, you know, I don't necessarily have a particular channel that I'm trying to work off of vis-a-vis the recent debate, but it has put it kind of front and center, and people are thinking about it a little bit more now. And perhaps activities like this could actually support an eventual, you know, coming to agreement for a rehab or something. I mean, it's such a shame to see it sitting there and no one going in or no one coming out and nobody really knowing what it's all about. So,
good idea, thanks. I'll go back on the agenda then. Does anybody have anything else for monitoring properties?
I guess just very briefly, we had a certificate of appropriateness. I actually have that for Alice to sign off on. But for the Hieronymus House, they had Joanne Chester was replacing the pulley system in a window on the back side of the house, like a really small window, about yay big. So nothing that faces the right-of-way or anything of that nature, and that was reviewed administratively and approved. Let's see, aside from that, I don't think that there's anything else in terms of monitoring.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll go back to study session. Oh, do you have staff report? I assume not, but no. Now we'll go back to the study session and brainstorm about things that we might do to call attention to Preservation Month in May. Last year, we did a lot of things. Kevin led a bicycle tour based on our mid-century modern tour that we'd done a few years previously. I did a lecture on architectural styles and another one on, excuse me, vernacular building types. And then both of those were followed by tours, one that I did with Scott in Huna and another one in Woona. So we had, you know, 5 things that we did. So we probably can't match that this year, but anyway, your thoughts on what we might be able to pull off.
I really enjoyed the lecture series on the architectural styles, and I got positive feedback on those. I know it's a lot of work for the individuals that give the lecture, but I thought it was well received. And I also liked the tours too. Those were wonderful.
Okay. Matt.
I had a couple of ideas that I wrote down. One was, is it possible to do something that would do some outreach with schools to kind of educate them, or more specifically teachers in the local area that are working with students, to teach them a little bit about historic architecture and the nature of historic communities and a sense of place and those kinds of things. I would be willing to help to work on that if there's anything that, and I don't know if we already have something in that regard, but maybe that would be worthwhile.
I don't think we do. I know there are a couple of things that might be good references. The National Park Service has done some lesson plan things, I think. You might look online for those. And then in Chicago, it might have been Landmarks Illinois did a schools project, and it's a huge notebook on how to use old buildings and make lessons out of them. So it was really teacher friendly.
Okay.
So those might be good models of things to look at.
Yeah.
I might have an extra copy of the schools thing, so if I do, I can lend one of those to you to see what it looks like.
I'd appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. And then the other, 2 other ideas. One was a nomination based on the conversations we've had with the public and amongst ourselves here at this meeting, at various meetings throughout the last year. Maybe a nomination writing workshop. Like, hey, there's this really cool building near where I live that if we lost it, our community wouldn't be the same. My neighborhood wouldn't be the same. So maybe do a workshop of some kind. that kind of tells people, so here's how these things are structured, which, I mean, you can read the form and see how they're structured, but I think sometimes walking people through the process, that, I mean, that can be intimidating. Or some of the local resources or even previous nominations that have a good history of the town, or where you can find out about your specific neighborhood and incorporate some of that material into your nomination as to how this plays in the the record of the built environment. And then the other thing I think generally, and we need the permission of the speakers, I think, but it would be great to find a way to record some of our lectures and some of the things that we do and post them as a resource for people in the future. It would be wonderful to if Alice was willing, for example, to have your lecture available to, and I'm sure, being that this is your area of expertise, you could go far deeper than you're able to in one of these. But it would be nice to even have that if people are curious. And then my third idea was it was more of a theme than anything, celebrating colonial revival or celebrating eclectic period architecture. And eclectic is pretty generic, but it also addresses specifically especially in this city. We have such a vast array of historic buildings that date to the early 1900s, and they're all very different. And many people that oppose the nominations often say, "Well, it doesn't fit this specific building type." Well, right. It doesn't, and it won't, because that was the nature of architecture during that period, that you're picking and choosing, and you have local adaptations and those kinds of things. And so maybe celebrating this eclecticism will help raise awareness to the fact that, yeah, this isn't the perfect copy of Monticello, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be for it to be historic.
Okay. Great ideas.
Comment.
Yes.
Before you look at a lot of materials about the education push that you're talking about, you probably need to, assuming that you're going to do it in Urbana, get to the 116 curriculum people. Having tried to push hard into schools in Urbana in the past, it's hard. Teachers feel overloaded. They're, of course, mother-father support system for a bunch of kids. And administrators get really, really booked up. And what you do pretty much has to be online with a state standard that they have to practice some kind of equivalency to. That might be not quite the way that Superintendent Owen would put it, but it's close to that. And I found that office to be very open. But with our Urbana Sister Cities committee work, we've tried a couple times to push in, and I can tell you, if you want to do something for May, you're going to have to get lucky. Either that, or you can appeal to an individual teacher or a principal if you know them. But I think it's a great idea, and I would support it, and I would be willing to do some work regarding it. But it's tough the way their calendars line up, the way the curriculum lines up, the way the state standards line up. That's a big enchilada. So.
Okay. It's true. Actually, I think it was Leal School a number of years ago did a series of booklets that were kind of survey projects, for grade school.
They were great.
Excuse me. And they did one in the Leal neighborhood. They did one of Krannert Center for Performing Arts and looked at different spaces. They did sketches and a little bit of research. And I think they...
The neighborhood.
And one in the neighborhood. It seems like there was a third or fourth one even.
We had that one. It was great.
Can look for extra copies of that. I think Scott's right, the timing thing, if we're looking at May, when they're looking to, so something quicker maybe, so maybe just even a kid-oriented tour or something, if we could offer up something like that, maybe? And then plan ahead more for the next year? Maybe?
Yeah, I don't want to be a quashi here, but my heart's been broken a few times trying to do this kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Other thoughts? So if we did a tour kind of thing, seems like the market worked well for picking up people. Oh, thank you. Picking up people at the market for tours.
I think that worked really well last year. So we could do that again.
We just kind of end up in the same neighborhood areas, but
Yeah, but I think, I mean, if you were to run with Matt's idea of, say, celebrating eclectic architecture or some other theme, I think there's enough in the surrounding area where you could, you're not pointing out the same stuff that you pointed out the previous year.
mhm.
So, but we could move elsewhere too, and just start tours elsewhere.
So in that particular timing, did that seem to make sense? What we started at noon, was it on?
I think it was at 10, so it gave people a
It
chance
was?
to get back and do
Okay.
market stuff.
And when does the market start outside again?
Like beginning of May.
Okay.
So
Any other thoughts? What do people think about the eclectic idea for the tour theme? Yes?
Yeah, I think it'd be good.
Do you have any particular buildings in mind now that you came up with this?
I can go look. There's quite a few of them, I think, on the 100 most. Like, I think that's where we should start, honestly. And I think we should, and I guess this is an appropriate forum to do it, is that to encourage the public. If you think your house is special, and it very well may be, like, we do lots of garden tours and other kinds of things where people come and say, ooh, and you get to show it off. So please let us know too. I mean, that would be great. You don't already have to be it doesn't already have to be a landmark to be featured, obviously, but things. I mean, I think we can look at some lists and develop a tour of 10 to 12 nice properties.
So I also liked your idea of teaching people how to do nominations. And Anka Voss, when we did the lectures last year, had mentioned maybe having a session upstairs in the archives after normal archives hours, so that we could be there, and we'd have to have a registration process and a limited number of people that we could handle in that space. But does that kind of thing make sense? Yes?
And she's a great resource for anyone. So it would be wonderful if she's willing to have us.
Well, so I can check with her on that. Let's see. So, and if you'll look around, everybody can look around for eclectic buildings on your side of Vine Street too. I can think of maybe that yellow one over there. Wait. Might be
Sure.
some. So is that like all we can handle probably?
It sounds like a lot. It's only
Yeah.
a month and a half away.
Yeah.
So
So city, is it okay if we like run with some of these things?
sure.
As long as you
Yeah.
guys don't have to be involved.
I mean, we'll help out as we can, but as much as you want to take on, that's perfectly fine by us.
Okay, I figured. I just thought I should check.
I did think that last year having a consolidated calendar of all the events to put out all at once was really helpful. So obviously, as dates get pinned down, let us know that so that we can plug that all together in a calendar and get that advertised.
So last year, we did like lecture followed by tour. Is that something that we should think about doing? We, the operative, should do for the eclectic tour as well, instead of just tour?
I think it would be nice. I mean, that would be.
well, I think it engages people too. I mean, it's nice to go and look at, oh, it's a pretty building, but like knowing a little bit about why the period is significant and why these buildings are significant potentially is valuable.
There was certainly a lot of overlap or continuum between the lecture and the walkabout. I mean, I only went to one of the lectures, but I recognized people that were there that commented about attending both of them as we were approaching buildings, you know, so I think that was a nice package for people.
Okay. So if we come up with something, are you able to lead an eclectic tour if we help piece things together?
I can give it a crack. Yeah.
Depends on what Saturday we come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay. So then we'll all be looking for buildings that are kind of funky, mixture of styles when you're out and about, yes? Okay. All right. Anything else? No? Sounds good. Okay. And Matt, you're still going to broach the subject of preservation with the school district somehow?
Yes.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay.
Now that you say that, Scott, it makes a lot of sense. You know, you always have the pie in the sky, but then realizing one that we're 60 days away from doing this, and a lot of the calendars are already set, it may be too much. But whatever information I get too, I can bring back and share, and then we can add that into our plans.
But
Well, you never
could
know
it
what-
be a program, though, that you did through the library, and it was for school-age children? That, I mean, the library has a big attendance to their functions that you could
Yes.
advertise. So it wouldn't necessarily be in the schools, but
Yeah. Well, and you might get lucky. There might be a curriculum alignment that you just fall into. You know? Now, I don't know what the track is, and you know where they're at with semesters or whatever. So
Yeah. Well, and they're still in school. Like even the more advanced kids who are taking an AP class, you know, after their AP class is done, you know, there's probably some flexibility there. Saying this and not knowing for sure, but it's worth a conversation to find out what the opportunities are, and I'm glad to do that.
Okay, sounds good. So are there any weekends in May that we need to stay away from? So there's graduation weekend. Should we necessarily stay away from that or not? We don't have to, or doesn't matter?
I mean, obviously, if your child is graduating, you'll probably choose to do that and
Yeah.
not go on the tour, but
Yeah.
the tours generally wouldn't get thousands of people to attend anyway, so I'm not sure you need to.
You never know.
yeah, it could be a hot.
Sorry.
You never know, Lori. Okay, so then that could include then May 13th, I think, maybe? So we all just kind of need to look at dates based on when other things fill in too, so.
I would already like to go on the record as saying that that if I could do my portion after the end of the semester, that would be swell. So
What's-
sometime after May 8th.
Oh,
One of
okay.
those weekends would be great.
Okay, good to know.
Thank you.
Anybody else have timing issues? Just generally busy. Okay. All right. So, depending on what else is going on, should we meet again next month to firm things up, or we can communicate through you guys should be sufficient, or?
I think probably both, communicating through me, and then but probably would benefit to meet and firm things up next month if needed. Yeah, let's say that.
Okay. Makes sense.
And if everybody could send me, I guess, their availability for the month of May, that would just help with scheduling, because that helped out quite a bit last year. Just knowing when everybody's going to be around.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. All right, any other thoughts on Preservation Month? Anyway, we didn't get a proclamation last year. Can we get a proclamation this year?
We can see about getting a proclamation, and we can always ask.
That would be lovely.
Okay.
Who do we ask? Council, mayor?
The mayor's office generally takes care of that, so we'll coordinate perhaps in April about that.
Okay. Thanks. All right, anything else on tours? Any other old building issues we need to know about? No? Okay. Anything from staff? Nope. All right, motion to adjourn?
Moved?
That was fast. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned, thanks.
Thank you.